Today's episode is brought to you by FreedomProject Academy. Looking for a K-12 classical online school built on Judeo-Christian values? FPA is enrolling now for the fall. Request your free information packet at freedomforschool.com. That's freedom, F-O-R, school.com.
It's time to get educated on the craziness impacting K-12 classrooms and college campuses around the world. This is the Dr. Duke Show.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Duke, joined by Katie Petrick, she of the elaborate facial tics. Before we get started, please hit that share button so we can educate more and more and more patriots around the country. Today, we take a look at Governor Ron DeSantis, possibly the next president of the United States. And Stanley Kurtz, a senior fellow at the Ethics and Public Policy Center, believes that Ron DeSantis has the power, based on what he's doing in Florida, to actually save the university system in this country. Okay, so the who is Stanley Kurtz. The issue here is, can Governor Ron DeSantis save our American universities? This is from the National Review Online, an interview with the College Fix, June 2022, and it was conducted by Christian Snyder. At the National Review Online, Kurtz, a senior fellow, praised Ron DeSantis greatly, arguing that he could, quote, save unsave American universities. Kurtz said he sees DeSantis' plan as, quote, a basis for the restoration of authentic liberal education in America's over-specialized and heavily politicized public universities, but offered a plan of his own. He takes what DeSantis wants to do, and he adds just a little tweak here and there of his own, which we're going to talk about coming down the road here.
And it's important to remember that this is an unpublished plan for Ron DeSantis. So if it's not out there in the ether for everyone to kind of attack. I mean, we know basically what he's doing, but nothing is finalized yet, is the whole moral of the story. And so it's interesting that Kurtz takes a look kind of at what DeSantis' plan is, and again, he says he has his own tweaks. But the first thing that they really talked about was the power of the boards of trustees. And Dr. Duke, being at a university yourself, you know that these boards of trustees at the university should basically have some power, but what actually happens at the university?
You know, it's the same problem we have school boards, right? The school boards, you would think school boards could veto all of this garbage. School boards of elected moms and dads could be able to fix problems but it never seems to work that way. Same with the board of trustees. Like when you become a school board member, when you become a trustee at the big universities, there's incredible pressure put on you to rubber stamp what the authorities are telling you. I mean, these trustees come from all different walks of life. Almost none of them are academics. So when the chancellors and the vice chancellors are telling the trustees what we have to have, even the most conservative tend to roll over and give in to that. And that's what Kurtz is complaining about here, among other things.
And you said it, I guess, best when it was, these people are supposed to be coming from all walks of life, not academics. And hey, you got the job just by saying that right there. You're not an academic, put you on the board. And that's what Kurtz said when he was asked. Actually, the College Fix talked to him. The College Fix asked him, what's the best aspect of DeSantis' plan for higher education? What provision do you think will most easily be adopted in states outside of Florida? So taking like the blueprint that Florida is going to do and then put it to the whole nation. And what is it that Kurtz said?
This is a direct quote from his response. Quote, the campus culture wars over what was then called political correctness remained at a fever pitch for around a decade. From about 1987 through 1997. After that, the public largely gave up on higher ed reform. I was in graduate school at this time, and he's exactly right. Quote, and the crazy postmodern jargon seemed incapable of doing serious harm in the real world. People assumed that graduates would buckle down and abandon leftist radicalism once they found jobs and started to pay taxes. On top of that, campus communities often vote based on university-related issues. In contrast, the average voter decides based on a huge range of issues, with public universities far down on the priority list. It's only in the past few years, and this is really the money quote, it's only in the past few years that the wider public has begun to take seriously the threat to American life from dominant campus ideology, which is now spilled out into society as a whole. In other words, state-level politicians with an interest in reforming the university are responding to the woke revolution and reacting against it. For the first time in my adult life, people get it. Far more change happens because of what goes on in universities than we ever thought was. Everything we're dealing with on the Dr. Duke Show, and Katie will go right back to this, everything we've been dealing with, whether it's critical race theory, whether it's transgender activism, where it's LGBTQ advocacy, all that stuff got started and remains lodged in the universities, and look at how it's affecting culture, mostly negatively.
And so when we're talking about these trustees and what they could do to help with this higher education, Kurt says if he had to single out just one item, it would be the push for trustees to be more actively crafting the university's long-term academic strategy, and to bolster that strategy by active participation in faculty hiring. But note that technically, DeSantis' plan doesn't grant trustees any power that they don't already have. Wake up, trustees, is what he's trying to tell you right there. You already have the power. It's like you need to encourage your little kid to, go out and try something new. You can do it. We believe in you. You just have to try. And so Kurtz then says the plan only works if trustees begin to take their existing responsibilities more seriously. Dr. Duke talked about it. They just kind of rubber stamp everything because, the academics know what's best and they're the higher ups. What do little me know? I'm not in the academic world. And yet you're in charge and being held responsible for what should be happening there at the university.
At every level, the deans, the chancellors, the trustees, all could cancel, literally could cancel what a department does. English departments are typical, right? It's English professors who vet and write the application jobs and decide who gets campus visits and who gets rejected. It's completely internal, which means radical departments like English departments only look for the same kind of radical leftism in their policies. You will never get diversity if you allow the various departments to pick their own faculty. There needs to be oversight, and that oversight can go all the way to the Board of Trustees. If your last 10 hires in English have been radical lefties, they ought to be able to say, no, go back to the drawing board and find us some real intellectual diversity instead of all this politics. They could do that, but they never do.
And what's really interesting to note here is DeSantis' plan includes basically making it so you have to take general ed classes again, and not general ed in the sense of LGBT this and everything else. It's truly general education categories. So the 5 categories are communications, which is writing and public speaking, humanities, natural science, social science, and mathematics. This used to be just common sense, but now DeSantis's plan is like bringing it back to that. And we don't have time to go into all the nuances here of what Kurtz is saying, but he's basically saying, hey, Florida public universities, let's kind of form this whole mini school within the university system to get it to be like the crux and important place on campus to where you learn that general ed from a group of people who actually, care about general education.
Yeah, and if I had one thing that I could do, one thing that I was allowed to do, I would do just what Ron DeSantis said. Go back to letting kids general ed be general ed. Don't hijack gen ed courses with all of this left-wing advocacy and all these requirements that they do politically correct classes. Take the muzzle off. Let kids choose their own liberal arts. That's what makes it liberal, their ability to choose, and stop trying to bully general ed courses into more left-wing advocacy courses. That's what I would do.
With all the censorship taking place on social media platforms, we've made it easy to keep up with your favorite content. Simply download the Freedom Project Media app in your app store. Get access to 18 new videos a week, plus thousands of archived shows, lecture series, and educational animations. Download the Freedom Project Media app on your Apple TV, Roku, tablet, or phone, and make sure you allow for notifications to keep you informed.
what has Joe Biden done for you lately, other than provide a laugh or two when you falls off of a bicycle? But hey, that's Unhealthy Republic this week. You should stay tuned for that. But anyway, the Biden administration's rewrite of Title IX may now put federal funding on the line for state-funded schools and universities that the government does not deem inclusive enough for the LGBTQ plus AI squiggle sign, exclamation point,
Poop emoji.
that too, individuals. Now, a news report states that this means that schools around the country will be forced to comply with a range of pro-transgender policies in things like sports, housing, locker rooms, and bathrooms if they want to continue receiving federal funds. We know it's June, and every June this is what the administrations, and at least the Democrats, do. It's June, it's Pride Month, we better show our bona fides, so we're going to put all this information out. And so they have a little fact sheet about President Biden and what they're going to do for the LGBTQ plus, insert every emoji you want, group of individuals to be like, hey, we're with you. Now, these federal changes have not yet been finalized, but they probably will be. But you may remember we just talked about this a week or two ago on the show, on how the Department of Agriculture was getting their bona fides in when they're talking about how you need to conform, your school needs to conform to the LGBT plus people, or you can't feed the children in your schools because we're not going to provide federal funding for your school lunches or your breakfasts or any of that, because the Department of Agriculture, they have to be on there too with the LGBT plus everything.
Yeah, and I hope you're paying attention, because you do not live in a republic anymore, and you do not live in a democracy. I got to tell you, when these Title IX programs are being rewritten by the president and his team behind closed doors, this is nothing that Congress votes on. This is nothing that the Senate votes on. There is no broader explanation or inclusivity. This is not something the American people get to vote in. Think about this. They are going to simply Obama did this with the dear friend note. Now Biden's going to do it. He's going to slip LGBTQ nonsense alongside race and gender and class as ways of adding a new civil right to a new protected group without anybody saying anything, and all the universities are going to have to immediately change. There are some fighting back, however. Responding to that threat was South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem, who accused the president of, quote, holding money for poor Americans hostage, unquote, to push a radical agenda. She said, South Dakota will continue to defend basic fairness so that our girls can compete and achieve. And I hope that's what happens. I hope the DeSantises of the world and the Kristi Noems and all those majority of Republican governors refuse to allow the law be changed by one man in his pen without anybody else being consulted.
Well, that other person consulted and approving of is Department of Education Secretary Miguel Cardona, who was approached with questions about the likely change of the Title IX regulations that, again, would rewrite discrimination based on sex to include gender identity. He finally had responded, I believe transgender girls should have access to sports. And that answer says it all for how he feels on everything. Now, the DOD has missed its self-imposed deadline to rewrite Title IX twice. Because, wow, if people actually paid attention, and then they did, and they pushed back on it, and now, oops, we're missing our own deadline. So there's, in a way, hope that they're going to miss it again, but they also did claim that they will finalize their proposal in, June, Pride Month.
Maybe that's our only hope until a new election, that NIL Joe Biden just won't keep remembering what the deadlines are.
That's
let's
a good one.
Praise God for whatever it is that keeps him from being able to do his job like a functioning adult.
Today's show is sponsored by our friends at MyPillow. Save up to 66% on all items at MyPillow.com when you use the code Dr. Duke. That's DRDUKE. Support this show by supporting a great American company.
In case you've been in a coma for the past about 6-7 months, costs keep going up around here. Maybe you haven't noticed at all, but they are. Life is costing a lot more these days. And so obviously that means college may have to increase costs too. Well, it's good because the LGBTQ plus alphabet soup and the diversity, equity, and inclusivity initiatives, they are not going anywhere. We're still getting them. So you'd be happy about it. Now, Campus Reform took a look at the woke programming recently, and they had first reported on what's happening in North Carolina. They took a look at 4 universities there, and they found that there is, shockingly, a correlation between higher tuition costs and the amount of spending on diversity, equity, and inclusion programs at the private versus the public institutions. And they said, when average, the private universities are outspending the public universities at a rate of more than 3 to 1 on their students' emotional and physical well-being. So if you want some emotional and physical well-being in North Carolina, you go to a private university there. But now they took a look at what's happening in Florida, of all places. Again, Ron DeSantis, you're in the news here. Well, at 4 of the universities in Florida, they found more support for this little correlation. They said at Florida State University, for example, the student government had prioritized the DEI initiatives by budgeting thousands of dollars to fund the intersectionality agencies. And you can see them. The budget passed unanimously, obviously, because why not? I mean, if it's DEI, it's going to be a unanimous support. The Black Student Union, for example, is receiving $38,960. The Pride Group will receive $34,660. And additionally, $27,810 was set aside for the Hispanic / Latinx or Latinx or whatever AOC is trying to push at the moment, Student Union. Now, the 3 student organizations received the most student government funding of all the campus agencies. And the Pride Student Union received $6,750 just for clothing and awards. Because clothing is obviously necessary for Pride. Drag queens, anyone?
Someone's got to cut the ass out of those chaps.
Hopefully not. Now, the tuition at Florida State University this upcoming school year is $23,790, which is up by a few $100s. And when you break it down, they are spending $1,625 per student on their student services costs this last year. So that's going to go up a little bit because it went up just a little bit. Now let's take a look at the University of Miami. This one I couldn't believe. I was shocked when University of Miami, what is happening to you? Their student services cost $3,361 per student. Per student. I hope you're getting a lot of free candy and other goodies and crap that you don't need for that $3,361. It makes perfect sense now why the tuition and their costs, like housing and all that, will be $78,640. $78,640. How is that money being spent?
And 90% of those kids will never access any of that.
Of course.
They're there to go to school. They're not going to take any advantage of this. In fact, would you consider that chart that was just up there, all the money is going to non-white people. It's going to very select minority groups for very specific reasons. Most kids can't access most of that money. That's a semester's worth of classes that you have to pay for minority groups to be able to $6,700 for the LGBTQ people to dress themselves.
And awards. Give themselves awards too. They need ribbons.
I thought LGBTQ was about taking your clothes off. I mean, how expensive is it to strip down to your jockstrap? It's not. So anyways, notice what you've got here. We are resegregating the universities. I would point out to you too, and I've made this point a lot of the times. Every bad idea that's now in the public schools comes from colleges and universities. Now you understand where social and emotional learning comes from. Now do you understand where all of this radical turning students into activists for LGBTQ causes? It starts here in your universities. This has been going on in universities a lot longer. This has been in your high school and middle schools. And this is what happens when there are no checks and balances culturally in this country to what happens in universities.
Before we go, let's take a little time to fill you in on some of the other, even crazier stories that we've been following. We start in California, of course, where the world's top online shopping service, Amazon, is that what it's called? Amazon? Oh, Amazon, is preparing to launch their long-awaited drone delivery service. Take a look.
It's a bird. It's a plane. No, it's probably just that tube of toothpaste you ordered. Amazon's drone delivery service Prime Air is finally clear for takeoff. Sort of. This morning, all the buzz is in small-town Lockford, California, where the company is asking residents to take part in the very first wave of drone deliveries starting later this year.
We'll reach out to customers that have backyards that our drones can safely reach, and then they'll shop with Amazon like they always do.
The company says once residents sign up, they'll start to see Prime Air eligible items on Amazon, where they can place an order just like normal at no extra cost.
I order like a spare part to something, right, that I want quickly. The drone just comes to my house and it drops it off. Like, what does that look like when it actually comes? And how long does it actually take?
It takes off and flies a few hundred feet in the air, navigates safely to a customer's backyard, lowers down, and delivers the package, all within an hour.
Well, this should be interesting. As far as safety is concerned, Amazon says it has built a different type of drone system that can steer clear of aircraft, people, pets, and other objects. Amazon was given the go-ahead by the FAA to fly drones in 2020, and other companies such as Google and Walmart have already begun carrying out similar deliveries through the air. Now, speaking of the friendly skies, a college student is attempting to make his mark on the aviation world by cramming more people into a flying tube. Alejandro Nunez Vicente has developed a new concept for a chaise lounge airplane seat, and he's got some major financial backing to pursue it. The concept features double-decker seats, where one level sits right below the passenger in front of them. The overhead storage cabin is removed, and passengers sitting on the upper seat are roughly 4.5 feet from the ceiling, meaning travelers couldn't fully stand up in the seat, but it could be argued that is the case basically now on most airlines anyway. Alejandro says the goal is to provide cheaper seats to travelers, which not only allow more people the ability to afford flights, but airlines the ability to add more passengers. The new double-decker system is currently being reworked to be lighter as major airlines are showing serious interest in the prototype. Duke, airlines now looking to offer passengers first class, upper class, and lower class. What are your thoughts?
Quickly show the picture. Not only is that technology going to be cheaper, this is not going to make, it's going to make it more expensive. And number two, claustrophobia, anybody? You want to be sitting like that with somebody my size above you? I don't think so.
Finally, let's wrap things up with everyone's favorite satire site. We've picked our favorite Babylon Bee headlines to see which one should be crowned numero uno this week. And we're going to start with anthropologists now believe all female Amazon tribe collapsed because nobody could get any jars open. Next, we have Hispanics just voting for whichever candidate isn't calling them Latinx. And Biden says the economy is as vibrant and healthy as he is. Whew. Next, we have science test positive for COVID. And finally, Marlboro adds puberty blockers to cigarettes to make them legal for kids. Yes. Duke, what is your top pick this week?
My favorite is the last one. If you put puberty blockers in rat poison, they would immediately, the public school system would immediately require rat poison at lunch in every public school in the country.
Well, that's going to wrap it up for this segment. More to come next time.
All right, that's going to do it for this show. For all of you at home and here at Freedom Project, stay educated, my friends.